So this is the code here. Uh, at the top, I define the text boxes and the numbers I use. And in here, I make these variables into the actual values of these text boxes. So then we get to the functions. The functions, they get called when the buttons are pressed. So, for example, this button on click says multiplication function. So when I click this button, it calls the multiplication function. Uh, and what the function does is, so if I go to the multiplication function here, firstly it checks if these two numbers are actually valid numbers I can do calculations with. And if they are, uh, firstly it turns the values of these two input fields into float numbers, and then I do the calculation as floats, and then I set the text of this text field as the result of that calculation. And if the function calls with an invalid number here, it just makes a toast saying please enter a valid number and not even try to do the calculation. So this is all the same for multiplication, subtraction, and addition. Just different signs, different operators here. For division, I've also added a check for divide by 0. So if I try to divide by 0, it will give me cannot divide by 0 error and not try to do the calculation. And in activity main.xml, these number fields are set as signed and decimal numbers. So it doesn't let me write anything other than proper signed decimal numbers. So if I try to write my name here, maybe you can hear my keyboard. It doesn't let me write it. Or, for example, if I try to write 550 minus, it doesn't let me. I can only write minus 550 and not put it anywhere else or any other symbol. I can also put decimal points and it will do the calculation just fine. But I cannot put a second decimal point. So it's really hard to mess up the calculation. But if you do, it just gives you a toast instead of crashing. So all the functions work as expected. So plus 50 plus 50, 50 times 50, 50 minus 50, 50 divided by 50, or again, same with the negative values here. And the decimal values here. So it all works as expected from this code. But since I'm working with floats, if I write really, really big numbers, it gives me infinity. It first tries doing it, uh, sorry, it first gives me 10 to the 18 or something like that. But after a value, after a certain number of value here, it is even too big for even float numbers. So it just says infinity, but doesn't give us any other weird error, uh, as you can see.